What's going on, everybody? Wilson here, your spiritual hype man. I hope you're having a great day. And if you're not, just remember it's just the thoughts in our head. We got to learn how to shut them off like a Jedi mind master by just shutting them off, like by thinking of something else, putting attention somewhere else, changing the frequency of what we're thinking about. And then biohack, right? The last thing, if none of those work mentally, if we're not there yet in terms of like Jedi Mind Master and be able to take focus off of the things that are hurting us, bothering us at the moment, then biohacking is the way. Jump into a cold ice bath, take a cold shower, jump in jacks, jump, listen to music, scream, squats, pull-ups, whatever it is, do something physical. Go for a bike ride, go for a walk, and I promise you'll stop feeling the way you're feeling if you're not feeling so good. So I'm hoping you're feeling great. I'm hoping you're doing amazing. I'm hoping you're having a great week. And this episode, I want to speak a little bit about the generational curse breaker, and that is what my plan is, to break these generational curses that I've identified on this last trip to Colombia, going back home, seeing where I came from, seeing how I grew up. And again, my memories are pretty much awesome from that. Like, I've had a lot of good memories from growing up. But also a couple of like, wow, this is fucking crazy, but I don't know, is this normal? When you think about it now, it's probably not so normal. I definitely want to talk about domestic violence, because that was something that we've dealt with. I've talked about it a little bit in some of the other podcasts. It's something that I've partaken in both on both sides, and then the stories that were being told by some of my family members about a certain family member. You're just gonna put that shit out there, but about my grandfather, right? So my grandmother and my aunts telling stories about things that they grew up with, some certain stories that I've never heard until actually this past trip. It's been quite a few years since I've been there, over 30 years since I've actually touched base on my homeland, and then just the idea of these curses, right? So I guess, again, being the generational curse breaker is going to be the thing. I'm also going to put that on a t-shirt, and we're going to have it on the store. So it's going to say generational curse breaker. If this fits with you, please purchase a t-shirt, or at least go look at one and support it, or share it, or buy one for holidays or something like that. That would be awesome. But I would say and that is what I want to jump into. So here's the story. My grandfather met my grandmother. My grandmother had, they were kids, right? They met each other. My grandmother had a couple of boyfriends, like whatever. When you're young, you have a couple of friends you hang out with. But then all of a sudden met my grandfather. People kind of pushed her towards my grandfather for whatever reason. I think my grandfather had a cousin or something that was like well known. He was like a big, and again, I can't say this word, musician. There we go. I said it. And then that's how it sort of came about, right? So he was awesome. He was charming. He was super friendly, super great. And then after the marriage, again, like I would assume most relationships that deal with domestic violence, they either see it before, or they see it right after the marriage, or they see it like as soon as it becomes like a serious thing, right? Like until then, it's like, hey, we're Mr. Nice Person. And again, I don't want to just say it's guys, but I would say the majority part of it is probably more domestic violence cases against fellas than the females. So everything was great until after the marriage, and then he started drinking more alcohol abuse, and then more physical violence. And so the story, again, this is the story that I'm getting from my grandmother and my aunt and from my grandmother specifically, because my aunts weren't around, was that my grandfather, part of the issue was that he wanted a male as like a son, but he got 4 females as daughters, and that was an issue because back way when it was like a big thing to have a male, and obviously like influence, thoughts, emotions, actions, decisions. His influence were a bunch of other males that were like would either make fun of him or like joke around like you can't have a male, and it's a bunch of females and blah blah blah. And so, and again, this is what I'm gaining from the story, was that it like really bothered him to the point that like he was using alcohol to fucking get away from it or to abuse it, and then would come home and like beat the kids and then beat up my grandmother. So, and at the same time would also be cheating on her. So there was a lot of like cheating, a lot of alcohol use, and a lot of beating up in terms of like beating on my grandmother. So domestic violence. I knew some of that. I knew about the beating up. Not, like I knew that there was domestic violence. I knew that he used to be a cheater, and I also knew that that like it was just a very tough time for everybody during around that time because he ended up just abusing domestic violence with physical and mental abuse on both my grandmother and then my aunts and my mom. So the story does go on. So this apparently just happened. It would be a regular occurrence, but there would be nothing other than, dealing with it, going through it, and then having that feeling afterwards, which if you've been part of, and again, domestic violence is just a vocabulary word to violence, right? To physical altercations between two individuals, whether it's female, male, 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 female, female, it doesn't fucking matter. It's just not being able to process your emotions, not being able to control yourself to enough to not put your hands on somebody or throw something or break something. And if you break it down to like when we're kids, to just not fucking have a physical meltdown tantrum and figure out how to process those emotions in a better, more proficient way. Right. So, but again, domestic violence is within the home, between whoever's like obviously inside your home, because obviously there can be domestic violence between, or I guess you can call it child abuse if it's father or mother to kid, but I would assume that can be categorized under domestic violence. And so one of the stories that kind of I knew about this, but I also met my abuelito, my grandfather, later on, and it seemed like he had changed. Like it seemed like he had changed, and I think he did to a certain extent. And I think he also lived with either regret, and I don't know if there was. Like, I don't know if they ever talked about it, right? But when I used to visit, like, he would be super nice to me, very encouraging, like, talk to me about, Papito Dios, which is God, Jesus, very into the religious part of things. I think he got into religion, and it kind of changed certain things about him. But then I asked my grandmother and my aunt, I was like, well, did that completely changed like after he was part of it? Was like, no, like they were still yelling, and there were still like mental yelling and mental abuse, I guess, in terms of even though he was seeing and being part of the religious part of it. So that was one. And then the story that so before I get into the story, again, I didn't know, like I know, but I didn't know to that point, and I still saw my grandfather in like a positive light because of the person that he was when I interacted with him years later, after hearing about all these things. And at the same time, there are certain parts throughout my life where I was the abuser. I was the person putting my hands on people. And so like, I think there was a level of like understand, like I understand, or like a level of like, oh yeah, no, I get it, kind of thing. Like, and again, I'm giving you this in terms of just how I used, like, I knew it was wrong. However, it was still part of my behavior. Right. So like, if I didn't lose it, and again, I want to talk about and I do want to do more episodes on this, and hopefully we can get some people too that have experienced it and have gone through it. But what I would say for me is I knew it was wrong. There was like when I passed that level of respect, or past that level of like non abuse and then abuse, there was oftentimes alcohol involved. There is oftentimes not 100%, obviously not in control. And I would often lose it to the level of like, if you've ever lost it and just completely lost it, like with no control, those are the levels that I would hit. Like I would absolutely get to those levels of like losing control and not giving a fuck about anyone and anything, because whatever happened or whatever was going on in the situation, I would say summed it up, got me upset, which probably hurt me in a way to the level that I like crossed that line. And there was no other way for me at the time to figure out how to filter through those emotions other than fucking going crazy and physically hurting either myself, physical property, or other people in the relationship. And I would say a lot of that does come from these generational curses. And this is where, again, going back to understanding that and I would assume that's how my grandfather was brought up to a certain extent. That's how my mom was brought up. And that's how my aunts were brought up. That's what I saw subconsciously. That's what I probably heard subconsciously. And then that's what I definitely remember from most of my interaction growing up with my mom. It's like, that's how it was. Like there was moments where she would lose it on me, lose it on anybody else, be physical, be crazy, like just, it was nuts. So again, these are the things that now I'm beginning to realize more and more. And I started realizing this years ago, right? Well, because I made the change, but more and more, it's just solidified the fact that like, holy shit, this is where a lot of this has come from. Like a lot of these influence, a lot of these ways of being, this ideology or this subconscious behavioral thing is where it's stemming from. And so the story that has somewhat changed my perspective on my grandfather, but again, I want to give him his respect because of what and who I saw in front of me years later, but still was a story that shook that foundation, right? That shook how I saw him or how I felt about him, especially after hearing the story. So, story goes like this. He was out drinking with one of his friends, one of his buddies, and he ended up coming home drunk with that buddy. And so and again, this is a story, and again, I don't know if he was talking about not having like a meal and pissed off about that, but whatever it was, it got to a point where he had whispered, or not even whispered, I don't think he whispered, he had told the friend, watch, I can show you how powerful I am, and I can kill them right here. Is the paraphrase of what my abuelita was saying, and my tia. So my tia was the oldest one. Tia Teresa was the one that had shared this story. Both of them obviously recalling the scenario. And so he had them line up against the wall from my abuelita all the way to the youngest. And so he had abuelita, he had Tia Teresa, I think it was my mom, Clara, and then Marina. So the four girls and then my grandmother all lined up against the wall. And he had a revolver. So he had a revolver in his hand. He was drunk, and he was aiming it at them. Yeah, like aiming it at them and just fucking, right? So like, as soon as I heard that, I didn't even have, like, as soon as you heard that, it's just like, fuck, like, holy shit. Like, I don't think I would have gotten to that level of mental physical abuse, right? Like violence. The craziest part is he ended up shooting towards my grandmother, offset, off left or off right, like I'm not sure exactly, but he ended up shooting and hitting the wall or hitting like a frame next to her. That made his friend run, and then so I asked, I was like, okay, and then what? Like I asked my grandma, my aunt, I was like, well, and then what? And then he just, after I guess he shot, like it was his, like he came back into, okay, get the fuck out of here. So I don't know. Again, that was the story that shook my foundation of like, holy shit, like that was my grandfather. Which is fucking insane if you think about it. It's kind of fucking insane. Okay. So that being said, there's still a lot of resentment within my family. There's still a lot of, like, my grandfather has passed since then. but I feel like there's still a lot of like things that my family haven't worked through, and my abuelita continued to stay with him. Continue to stay with it. I think there was a moment where he left, or they was sent out or something like that, and then he came back. Like he came back, he was distraught, he was apologetic, and my mom, I guess my aunts, I don't know if my mom was there at the point or what. I would assume she was there at the point actually. So all the girls were just like, you cannot let him come back. You cannot let him come back. And she let him come back. And what happened? The cycle started over again. Until one day where my grandfather came in to, it was the same fucking cycle. See, drunk, coming in home, coming late, and just wanting to beat up on my abuelita, my grandmother. Then the one time, this is what I said before in the other podcast, is you get to a point, doesn't matter what the situation is, you get to a point where you break up with that relationship. And this is where my aunts and my mom stood in front of my abuelita, or they said, if you go to hit her again, you're going to have to fucking go through us, or something like that, right? Like, fill in the Hollywood story movie, right? And I think that's what it was. I think he went to go hit abuelita, and then he got smashed up against, like, I think they hit him with a pot or a pan or something against the head, and that was the last day. That's what they said, and that was the last day he ever put hands on her. And again, like, this is so, like, look, for anyone that's going through domestic violence or has had the experience of it, there are multiple ways of dealing with it, right? There are multiple ways of getting to the next level or crossing over the barrier to not be in that situation. It becomes very hard when the individual that is doing that, or vice versa, in terms of a relationship, or it could be both people can be doing it. One person can start it, one person can finish it, or continue to go. Right? There's lots of things going on. And again, I don't want to give that as an excuse, because I know I was wrong in all the situations. I'm not going to say in all my situations I was wrong 100% completely. But it becomes very hard when there's an emotion, and that emotion of love is in our thoughts, right? Like there's I love this person, and this person is my other half, or I cannot live without this person, even though they continue to beat me. There's no other security than this other individual. I know that's very hard, and I know that's something that obviously my abuelita dealt with, and why she allowed him back. And now I'm going to talk more about this subject matter, I think, throughout the year, because I think it's important. It does get talked about, and usually gets talked about for like 1 month, and then it doesn't get talked about after. But I would say there's plenty of ways to get over it. There's plenty of ways to get through it. Not over it, like in terms of, well, yeah, you kind of have to get over that mentally too, and physically to continue to move forward and progress, and not let that bring you down. But use that almost as like your stepping stone, as your next thing to understand what you want out of a relationship, what you want out of yourself, and what you were not willing to be part of. Right. And so I would say I would leave you with this. If you are dealing with something like that, it's a much deeper thing than what's happening in front of you. And so the change, there's only a couple of ways that's going to happen. One, the individual or yourself, if you're the person that is doing this, you need to ask yourself the question, and you have to have enough emotional effect on yourself to change it, because what you're doing, or what the person is doing, is affecting you, not only the person that you're doing it to, but yourself and your entire situation for that day, that week, until all of a sudden you guys make up and it happens again. And then you go through it again, and you go through it again, and you go through it again, and then you wake up and you have that same fucking feeling that you're like, holy shit, I can't believe I did that. I'm the worst person in the world. And you have that again, and you have that again, and you have that again. But until you realize that, like, 1, you can lose this person. 2, you're going to go to jail. 3, someone else can come and take care of you. There's so many things that can happen when it comes to like violence. Okay. And so, like, I feel like for me, in my own personal experience, these were the things that helped me change and get out of what I needed to get out of, to identify a couple things. One, alcohol abuse, right? Not being in control in those moments, putting myself away from situations like that, or having too much alcohol where it didn't allow me to think clearly or do well within those situations. Two, address the inner demons like jealousy. Jealousy was a huge part for me because of the things that I used to do, the things that I was doing behind other people's backs that I was part of a relationship, and then obviously thinking that was happening to me. Huge. And then three, when you find the individual that you think you love, or that you know you love, or that you honestly can say that this is my other half, you ask yourself the questions. You ask yourself one simple question: do you love this person? And the answer absolutely is yes, right? It would have to be yes if you love this individual. Then the follow-up question is, then why do you treat this person that way? And that's all you need. Right? Well, that's all I needed, right? You may need more. But for me, it was understanding those couple of things. I need to get myself out of this situation. I need to stop letting myself not be in control. So get rid of the alcohol, get rid of the over abuse of this thing. Two, really just like work out your inner demons. Now, you may need someone to work out with you. You may talk to a therapist or psychologist, somebody that is grounded enough to talk to you about your inner demons. And for me, it was jealousy, not fitting in, disrespect, like all these things that were subconsciously still fucking affecting me to a certain extent, but understanding what they are and then working through them. And then lastly, really asking yourself the question, do you love the person that you're with? And if the answer is yes, then ask yourself, why am I treating them that way? Very simple. That was what led me to change my behavior and led me to change the way that I communicate and what the actions I take when things don't go my way. That's it. And since that day I asked myself that question, I have yet to put my hands on anybody else. Okay, wow, that was a deep one. I hope you're having a great day. And just remember, nothing changes until you do. We'll talk to you guys again in the next one. Peace.